everybody, it's Tony George. Welcome to March Madness and Conference Tournament time. We're talking Power 5 conference tournaments this week. We've had some March Madness crazy stuff happen already. And, of course, we're going to bring in our good buddy and media partner, Sean Salisbury, to talk about the number one power-rated conference in college basketball. No, it's not the Big 12, and no, it's not the ACC this year. It is the Big 10. Sean, this tournament kicks off on Wednesday with a couple of play-in games with a couple of bottom feeders. I hate to admit it. I'm an alum of Nebraska, and we're taking on Penn State tomorrow for basically a play-in game, and then Minnesota taking on Northwestern. Lines are not out yet. But what we're talking about is overall futures bets in this conference to win this tournament. And, Sean, my first question to you, do you think that Michigan would have lost the number one seed in the NCAA tournament by losing to Michigan State the other day? Or are they secured in at number one regardless?
I don't think it's a lock. So I think there's still stuff to do. If they were to be upset early in this tournament, I don't think they're a number one seed. It was 2 weeks ago. It was a stone cold lock, at least it appeared. And then they ran into Illinois and got hammered by 23 at home. Then took care of Michigan State, and then that back-to-backer with Michigan State get beat. I think Michigan has to have a good showing. Now, are they worthy of the number one seed? Yes, but it's no longer a lock. I think that with the head coach and their basketball club, I think they have to preach. We've got to go deep into this because the one seed's going to matter. And I think they're going to play fine in the tournament. But if you're Juwan Howard, I would imagine his basketball club and that school is not thinking automatic number one seed because they've got to go deep into this because losing early, they're not going to be a number one seed. That loss to Michigan State hurt their chances. And as we go further along, Michigan State may be a long shot in this tournament, but if you're looking for an underdog, they can play physical enough to hang around.
Well, one thing about it, our friends over at OddsShark, I've got these futures bets to win the Big Ten tournament, and Michigan sits atop at plus 150, Iowa at plus 350, Illinois plus 375, Ohio State plus 450, Purdue at plus 700, and Wisconsin at plus 1,500. Wisconsin, a little bit of a disappointment this year. Thought they might do a little bit better during the season. Offensively, they just struggled a lot. But let's get down to it. Number one seed is Michigan. Number two, Illinois. Number three, Iowa. Number four, Purdue. And let's talk about Illinois a second here, Sean. You know, I was talking to a real good friend of mine out here who is a sharp bettor. The only thing he bets is college basketball, and he's damn good at it. He puts in about 2 wagers a week, which if you're betting big money is a smart and prudent thing to do. But nonetheless, he told me this even before Illinois beat Michigan and beat Michigan badly in Michigan's own house. He told me about a month ago, Illinois is going to be a Final Four team. And I thought he was crazy because they kind of had a little bit of a rough patch there in the middle. But Illinois has come on here, Sean. I think they're a huge threat in this tournament.
Oh, let me tell you something. If they blink, Illinois is going to go. They're going to end up getting an obviously very high seed. What were they ranked at today, Tony? Do you know where they're ranked?
I don't know.
I didn't even
top 5 or 6.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, because at one point they were fourth in the country or something. I guess depend on where you go. But this was a week ago or so. So they're in the top 6. They can win the whole thing. Forget just now to get through like a Gonzaga or when Baylor's playing their best. The Zags are obviously going to be the number one seed, I believe, in the entire tournament. But I love this basketball. I love this team, man. I do. And this is your buddy wasn't lying. He just was out in front of it a little more. And I think it took a little bit more for us to say, because when we were Ohio State was playing really good basketball, and Michigan, great basketball. We know with Luka Garza and the way Iowa was playing that you had to have them. Then all of a sudden, we just, by the way, and now we're sitting at Illinois with an awesome Big Ten again in what may be the toughest conference, and arguably with the Big 12 in college basketball this year, that I don't think they've eliminated themselves depending on what happens here in this tournament. But they go win this tournament, they may be sitting on a as the fourth seed, as the fourth number one seed. I think Illinois' got a real chance, and I think Illinois' got a real chance to run deep in this tournament. I don't even look at them as a long shot. I think this is one of the favorites to get to the Elite Eight, and they're battle tested and they can score the basketball. They're well coached. I like this team. I really do. And for the most of the year, not a lot of people we don't give them enough credit. I know I haven't until about the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season. I think Illinois can win the Big Ten tournament unless the wake-up call from Michigan has them going, this is going to be a tough go. You get through this, you're going to also have to get your legs underneath you as a Big Ten team, knowing what's next, because the Big Ten tournament damn near as battle-tested as the NCAA tournament. This is going to be fun to watch.
Well, matter of fact, Illinois is ranked number 3 in the country, and Michigan ranked number 4. I got to remember I'm dealing with a mainstream sports analyst here, and I can't remember the last time I did a show and somebody asked me where somebody was ranked at, because as a gambler,
I knew they were number 4 a couple weeks ago. Right, exactly. You're right, man. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, as we go into it, and I don't like, a lot of times going into it, I know where they are, but I don't really pay where they 3rd or they 5th. To me, where the seed is. But when we get down to when Joe Lenardi and the rest, we start breaking it down. And with all the way you're the betting part of you, because I look at both, that you're in on all this, and you know how to take care of all that business. But if I'd have told you a month and a half ago that Illinois was getting up to 3 seed, you'd have probably said, I don't know, man, to get through the Big Ten like they have. So, Tony, you're probably pretty wise if you have them not only as a 1 seed, but as a team that can go deep in this tournament.
Well, one thing about it is they lead the Big Ten, Illinois does, in effective field goal percentage. And they also lead the Big Ten in effective field goal percentage from two-point range because of their length and their size. And they have a very high percentage, and they get a lot of second chance putbacks as well. And so I think they're going to pose a problem. And here's where we go with the brackets. Illinois, eventually, if things play out, and let's talk about this team. At the beginning of the year, Sean, I thought that Iowa was a Final Four team. I thought Luke Garza was the best player in college basketball. I think he's got the second most points in college basketball as a player this year to date. Naismith Award winner. I mean, the guy's he's an unbelievable basketball player. Iowa has an unbelievable perimeter game shooting-wise when they're hitting on all cylinders. But for one reason or another, they've taken 7 losses this year. They took a really, really bad loss earlier in the season when they did a pickup game with basically Gonzaga. They went out and played them, and they got whipped thoroughly. But I've seen a lot of chinks in the armor with Iowa. Now, they're in a bracket where they're probably, if things play out, they're going to get Wisconsin the game before they play Illinois, and it may come down in that bracket to Illinois playing Iowa in that lower half of that bracket where Michigan's going to get Ohio State or Purdue winner. So I will tell you, if Illinois comes out of that bracket, if they come out of that game, if they play Iowa and Iowa doesn't piss down their leg, and they get in the semifinals here, Illinois is going to have a lot tougher path to get to the final game here if it plays out that Illinois and Michigan on the upper and lower tier of the bracket play each other. Your thoughts on Iowa, Sean, in this tournament?
Yeah, you know how I felt about them when we had our little side bet when Michigan and Iowa played late in the season, and this is a team that has to shoot well. They didn't. They went through a spurt where Garza, listen, as good as they can be on the perimeter outside of Garza and defend at times, it comes down to, I don't think they're capable of winning if he doesn't have good nights. I just don't. And against Michigan late in the season, at one point, I think in the game, he was 5 of 16 shooting, had less than 20 points. And we even went into that game saying, if that happens, they can't beat Michigan, especially in Ann Arbor, and they didn't. So this is a team that sometimes you look at them, Tony, and when I'm watching them, and I know what Garza for the most part is going to bring, but if you find a way to neutralize him a little and make the rest of the squad beat you, you got a pretty good chance, especially if you're running into an Ohio State or a Michigan or an Illinois in this. And the way Michigan State may have played their way in with a victory over Michigan too. So if you run into any number of these teams with a top-heavy Big Ten, I'm not picking them to win the Big Ten championship. I do think they have the best player in the Big Ten, obviously, and the best scorer. But there's something that bothers me. I don't like teams that when one weapon goes, that you got to go where only one takes you. And I know that that's usually the case in when it comes to hoops when you take away the star. But we've seen perimeter play in the past. It's a guard world and a perimeter world we live in, and guards that can shoot the basketball. I just don't know if we're to run into Michigan or real in this tournament, that if Garza does not play great basketball, if they're capable of beating either one of those teams without him playing MVP, Big Ten Player of the Year type game. I like Iowa. I don't think Iowa's winning the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, let's talk about Michigan State. You know, it was about a year ago this week, Sean, that all of our worlds changed with the COVID-19, and we're going to take a break. And next thing you know, we're flattening the curve for 2 or 3 weeks, and a year later, we're still trying to recover. But at the end of the day, also, there's a couple of crazy things going on. You know, Michigan State, you know, just how things have changed. If you even take a look at the ACC tournament, when did you ever see Duke as plus 1,600 just to win the tournament on the odds board? And on the other side of the coin, when would you ever think you'd see Michigan State as a number 9 seed in the Big Ten tournament with Tom Izzo a coach and the recruiting that he does? But Michigan State's an interesting story. They had a big win over Michigan over the weekend. And Michigan State, Sean, they got to get by Maryland just to advance to play Michigan. And that's not going to be easy for Tom Izzo on a neutral floor.
Oh, let me tell you something, buddy. Now, they got a great performance against Michigan in the final game.
Yeah.
An incredible performance. Was it Rocket Watts who put on the performance? That sophomore had a great game against Michigan. And it's going to matter. You know, Michigan came on, they end up 9-11 in the Big Ten, but finished 15-11 overall, Tony. But as we know, a Tom Izzo team, listen, for them to beat Michigan or Illinois, they'll have to have their best game of the year in the Big Ten. They will if it got to that, but they just will. But the one thing I know about Izzo's team, when they're right, Tony, is they are knocking you around. They are keeping your score down, because I don't think in a end-to-end score when it creeps up into the 80s, I don't think that favors Michigan State this year. And Tom Izzo's teams, to defend and get on the glass where they're always, every year, dominant on the backboards, they're going to have trouble getting through it. But I'm going to tell you something. It's usually a lot of times at this point in the year, not only with the conference tournaments, but the NCAA tournament, sometimes it's not the best team or the most talented team, should I say. It's the team playing the best. And while Michigan State, they haven't played, they've been up and down and inconsistent, but I can promise you this, the team I saw in December and January ain't the team I'm watching now with Michigan State. And I don't like to push against Tom Izzo's teams because he will dress his team down and have them ready to play, I would imagine. I still think Michigan and Illinois are the class, but I'm going to tell you what, you let Michigan State start believe, and Watts and these, every now and again somebody else creeps up and has a dynamic performance like he did against Michigan, look out. And I promise you this, neither Illinois nor Michigan or Iowa along the way, I'm talking about throughout this Big Ten, is going to look and say this is a cakewalk with Michigan State like it would have been probably early in the season when we were watching them play.
Yeah, and you take a look at these numbers here. I got these off OddsShark this morning. You can bet Michigan to win the tournament at plus 150. I mean, that's value right there.
You ain't lying.
You also can bet Illinois at plus 375, folks. So those are two of the bets that I've already made out here in Las Vegas. I put a small wager on Iowa at plus 350. But the other team that I took a look at here, was Ohio State. Ohio State has not played well down the stretch, but they played in spurts. They went into Iowa and beat Iowa this year. This is a team that if they get hot from the outside is a threat to anybody. And I just wonder if we leave out Michigan, Illinois, and Iowa, who would be that fourth team that you would slide in there, Sean, as a possible, I guess, live dog, Cinderella story that sort of thing, because you got Purdue in there as well, and Purdue and Ohio State. And I would think if Ohio State somehow they're going to end up playing Purdue. I would think that if they could come out of that game with a very convincing win, Michigan better have their radar up for that one, because that's an upset spot. It really could be.
Yeah, and at one point during the season, the Buckeyes were one of the classes of the Big Ten, Tony. It wasn't just weeks ago when they were at the top of it. So, this is a team that I know we've kind of blown off and kind of forgotten about recently, but when Michigan played Ohio State late, Tony, wasn't Ohio State top 5-6 team in the country at the time?
Yeah.
I know top 10. I'm just trying to go back to the time with all this going. Yeah, and so and then Michigan took care of their business, but I agree. And we start to break this down. There's Michigan State we talk about. There's a lot of ifs in the conference once you get by the top heavy. Michigan State, Purdue's capable. I'm a bit disappointed. When's Archie Miller's Indiana team going to get back to being Indiana? That bothers me. But Michigan State's capable. Ohio State more than capable. We know that Iowa has got superstar scorer. We know that Illinois is a Final Four team and a top 4 team. 2 teams from the Big Ten couldn't end up with 1 seeds with Michigan as well. So we're talking about a conference that if you stuck somebody like an Ohio State or Michigan State into another conference, Tony, we're talking about teams that say, okay, they maybe slide through their conference more simpler than they have, and that they're fresh-legged when we come to the NCAA tournament. But I'm with you, man. If you took away the top 3 teams you talked about, how would you not pick Ohio State to win the Big Ten tournament? If you took away the big 3. And Ohio State was one of the big 3 or 4 just a couple of weeks ago, a team that finished, 18-8. But this team had national – people, eyes were open and ears were perked up a month ago about this basketball team.
Yeah, and bear in mind, Ohio State is number 2 in the Big Ten conference in offensive efficiency. Overall, Iowa's number 1. Michigan is number 4. So bear that in mind. And also, if you took a look even at the power ratings on KenPom, Michigan is power rated over Ohio State by only 5 points, folks. So, you can have a bad game against an Ohio State team, and next thing you know, if they're hot, next thing you know, with 5 minutes left in the game, you're down 6, and you're struggling.
And don't they –
big time.
Yeah, will Ohio State take on – let's see, on Thursday, are they not playing the winner of Minnesota and Northwestern? Is that their first matchup,
Yeah, let me
Tony?
pull it up. Let me pull it up here.
I believe it is. Minnesota, on Thursday, they play the winner of the Minnesota Northwestern game that's being played on Wednesday.
Yes.
And the truth of the matter is, Tony, that should be a relatively easy victory.
Yeah.
It should be for Ohio State. So that gives them a chance. Then they pop in, take care of their business on Thursday. Now it's a whole different ball game. So it's not like they're going to have some and I know they're always capable of upsets, but they shouldn't have a difficult test taking care of one of those 2 teams on Thursday in the Big Ten tournament.
No, and neither one of those teams can win on the road. And that's one thing you want to look at when you're looking at handicapping postseason tournaments and, of course, March Madness and the NIT. It is teams' road records. And it's interesting because I think Ohio State will have a relatively easy time there. And then they get to play Purdue, who's got the double bye in the tournament as the number 4 seed. So Purdue's going to be, when you're sitting around all week and you got a team with a game under their belt, especially when it's a relatively easy game. I would say if Ohio State was playing Iowa and they eked out an overtime win and they got to go play Purdue, Purdue's probably sitting in an advantageous situation. But if Ohio State gets a double-digit win against, Northwestern or Minnesota, which they probably should, or close to it, nothing where they're not going to kill themselves and, go through the bench to try and win, Sean. They roll into that game with some momentum against Purdue. They might have an easy time of it. It's not going to be an easy out, but this is a team that I put $100 on at plus 450. My top play in this tournament is Illinois plus 375. I've just seen a few chinks in the armor with Michigan over the past couple of weeks that makes me scratch my head a little bit. The win over Iowa was impressive. But then again, Iowa has just kind of struggled to play mediocre basketball and kind of get by here the last month of the season. And although they have the best player in the tournament, that's not going to carry them. But I did put money on Michigan, Iowa. Illinois was my top pick, and I did put a little bit of money on Ohio State here. I don't think anybody else factors in this tournament at all. I guess the number one thing is, can Tom Izzo beat Maryland and really give Michigan a competitive game in the second round to get himself in the NCAA tournament? That's a little side story here to the Big Ten tournament, Sean.
And I'm big in cycle. And, Tony, we talked about it. Like you said, you get worried about teams. I do get worried about teams in any conference or any heading into conference play or the tournament. And I don't. It's not it's fair to say, well, they went in the back door, because that means the team took care of their business early enough to be able to play somewhat average at the end, meaning like an Iowa who hasn't played the same basketball that we're used to. And you say, well, I'm big on the psychological aspects of believability for themselves, right?
Right.
And who's good enough to turn it on and off like a light switch and get to that psychological part. I don't believe that Michigan State a month ago would have believed they could beat Michigan. I don't. Now, Izzo would have preached it, but you and I don't think many thought that could have happened, right? On a normal night when everybody's playing well. But after what we saw over the weekend with Michigan State, you mentioned the Friday matchup where Michigan State takes on Maryland, or should I say, I think it's Friday, Michigan State
Thursday.
and Maryland. And Thursday, okay, so they'd play Friday. Michigan will play the winner of Michigan State, Maryland, is my point. And if you're Michigan State and you pull that out, you can't help, even though you'll have some fresh legs, if you're Michigan, to think that the last thing you saw was allowing Michigan State to take care of their business. And and Michigan State has to believe they can beat Michigan. So that game against the Michigan State-Maryland game, how hard that Maryland pushes Michigan State in that game and where that gap is. But I think the psychological aspect does help Michigan State, knowing that we got Michigan, and I know it's that we just played them, and it's hard to keep doing this where you keep seeing the same team, it'll be 3 times in what, Tony, in a week and in like 8 days or whatever it's been.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, now Michigan may blow them out because they're a better team. But there is something to be said for, hey, and now had Michigan hammered them again by 20, Tony, in this game, where they beat up on Michigan State, I would have had some concern about Michigan's ability to do it 3 times in less than 2 weeks and say, oh, man, this is too easy. It'll be tougher this time around, I believe.
I think there'll be there'll be an NIT bid out there for Michigan State because they're Michigan State. They'll be one of the 16 invited to the NIT if they don't make the NCAA tournament. I think if Michigan State gets blown out by Michigan, they're going to the NIT. I think if they beat Maryland and then go give Michigan a ball game, they'll probably get in the NCAA tournament, the old grandfather clause, good old boy network. And Michigan does put asses in the seats, and they do bump TV ratings because they have a big following here. So, Sean, who's going to win the tournament? Give me your overall tournament winner. Who's going to win the Big Ten tournament?
I've been leaning Michigan for a long time, brother. I have been.
Okay.
And just for I'm 6 and 1/2 dozen in the other. And I got a very dear friend who is a diehard Wolverine fan. This is no way to bet money, trust me. But this is my pull for him. And you know how you pick 2 different brackets? My other one may pick another one. I actually think Illinois today is the best team in the conference. I do. And I think they are a dangerous, dangerous team. If I see Michigan roll through and take care of Michigan State or Maryland, whoever it is, the way I think they should, I'm going to pick Michigan to win the tournament. I'm going to pick Michigan to win the Big Ten tournament, and for them in Illinois and Illinois to hang around in both obviously possible 1 seeds. If Michigan slips out of this thing and goes to a 2 seed, I'm not sure where I'm going to pick them tournament wise, but I'm gonna lean towards Michigan finding their way in this tournament and beating Illinois. But I do not feel comfortable with the pick. But I will take Michigan. I'm going to try not to waffle on who was my team 3 weeks ago.
I'm going to take Illinois to win the tournament, and they're going to play Michigan in the final. I like Illinois. I think they're peaking at the right time. I like their momentum. I like the way they closed out the season. I like their length. I like their coach a great deal.
Agreed.
Not Juwan. I'm not, and that's not a knock on Juwan Howard. The one thing about Michigan that scares you, and there's really no right or wrong pick here. It's going to be one of those two. You can bet both of them and make money, on the futures. But the thing of it is, Michigan has depth. They have 8 players that get 10 minutes or more a game. And 14 out of their 18 games this year, Michigan won by double digits. So this is a team that could really get going. Losing to Michigan State on, was it Sunday, really didn't surprise me that much. I kind of thought, back-to-back like that. And, Tom Izzo's got a team that is not going to be intimidated by anybody, including Michigan, especially Michigan. And so, that didn't surprise me all that much. But I like the reason I lean Illinois is I like the way they closed out the season better, Sean. That's why I'm going with them there.
Agreed.
And I do like their length, and I like their effective field goal percentage inside. Nobody can shut them down in the paint. And,
Tony, I feel like this about I love Michigan's team. I lean with you. If I was going by the team that I like the way the optics for me, I would lean with you. But Tampa Bay Buccaneers did this to me. I picked them in August to win a Super Bowl, right? And then they got to 8-5, and they kind of floundered around. They beat they lost twice to the Saints, and then they beat Green Bay at home and hammered them in their own building. As we started to go to the playoffs, then I started to see about the last 4 or 5 weeks, Brady get right and this team get right. They're like, uh-oh. And then they go 3 on the road and win and go win a Super Bowl. Your Illinois team's like that. I'm hoping through this tournament, this kind of becomes a little bit of playoffs for Michigan, that I start to see them start to do what Illinois has done and climb that ladder. So when they peak in the Big Ten championship game against Illinois, that we're getting Michigan's best. If I had to put it all in one area, I would lean towards you. But I'm gonna stick with my guns and think that Michigan finds its way with all that athleticism by the time that we get to the finals in this, and it'll be one hell of a game, and I can't wait.
Well, I know one thing. Sean Salisbury owes me a steak and a beer for a lost bet, but I'm not going to go double or nothing on this because it's too risky. But I'll let you have a chance back, folks. It is March Madness right there at DocSports.com. We've been around 50 years, and get yourself hooked up for March Madness with the free $60 and the link in the description below. And you can get yourself a March Madness package. Over the last 84 games, I am 65% against the number documented. It's not somebody blowing smoke up your butt, making up stories here. Doc Sports does not operate like that, so be sure and get yourself hooked up. And we have a plethora of handicappers over there that are the best in the business, and so be sure, as well as a ton of free information over there as well. So be sure to get over to DocSports.com and get yourself ready for March Madness. It starts right here, right now. Sean Salisbury and myself will be back on Thursday. We'll probably have a Big Ten tournament free pick for you, as well as a couple others, and we'll do some look-aheads over the weekend on Friday as well. Sean, thanks for stopping by, and remiss in my duties if I didn't publicly say happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. Always great to be on with you. This is one of the best times of year for a lot of things, including the NCAA tournament. I look forward to Thursday, bud, and thanks for the birthday wishes.
You bet. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Back at you on Thursday with Sean Salisbury.